Welcome back. In this video, we will be discussing formative and summative assessment. Formative assessment is a deliberate process used by teachers and students during instruction that provides actionable feedback used to adjust ongoing teaching and learning strategies, and it improves students' attainment of curricular learning targets and goals. Formative assessment is not a worksheet, test, assessment, or quiz given at the end of a learning period. While summative assessment is an assessment which is administered at the end of an instructional unit in a course, these assessments are intended to evaluate student learning by comparing performance to a standard or a benchmark. Let's take up formative assessment first. Formative assessment is an ongoing process of collecting evidence of student learning during instructions. It informs about next steps in teaching learning, and there is still an opportunity to influence learning. Formative assessment helps in identifying areas of need at the end of a unit. Formative assessment can take place during a class period or during an instructional sequence. A teacher can make adjustments to the instructional plans to account for students' current understanding and to support them moving closer to the intended learning goals. Teachers and students both are involved in the formative assessment. They both are involved in the collection and consideration of evidence of learning. Learning progression should clearly articulate the sub-goals of the ultimate learning goal. Learning goals and criteria for success should be clearly identified and communicated to students. Students should be able to provide with descriptive evidence-based feedback that is linked to the intended instructional outcomes and criteria for success. Both self and peer assessment are important for providing students an opportunity to think metacognitively about their learning. A classroom culture in which teachers and students are collaborative partners in learning should be established. The reason why it is important to assess student understanding before a lesson has concluded include removal of barriers. It often concepts build off of each other. If students did not understand the initial foundational concepts you are teaching, there is no point in moving on to the subsequent topics, as students will be unable to make meaning out of them. If you spend too much time teaching something students already understood or not enough time on topics they find difficult, you will be using your limited time inefficiently. The only way to determine this is to assess student understanding their lessons. In order for feedback to be effective, it must be timely. If the only feedback students receive is after the lesson is after the exams get over, then students will have to move on to the next task. It is not only helpful to receive feedback even when that the information can no longer be applied. It will also be a waste of the time writing on it. Formative assessment are the activities that assess and provide feedback during the learning process. Formative assessment uses grades or data to demonstrate the learner's growth after instruction. Formative assessment helps students to learn and practice, while summative assessment helps assess the student's performance. Among all the forms of assessment, formative assessment is the most powerful assessment for the improvement in the teaching learning process. Assessment for learning occurs throughout the learning process. Teachers in this help in aligning the instructions, identify particular learning needs of students, select and adapt materials and resources. They create differentiated teaching strategies and learning opportunities for helping individual students to move forward in their learning, and they provide immediate feedback and direction to students. In summative assessment, faculty members have the responsibility of reporting student learning accurately and fairly based on the evidence obtained from a variety of contexts and applications. Effective assessment of learning requires that faculty members provide a rationale for undertaking a particular assessment of learning at a particular point in time, a clear description of the intended learning, processes that make it possible for students to demonstrate their competence and skill, a range of alternative mechanisms for assessing the same outcomes, public and defensible reference points for making judgments, transparent approaches to interpretation, descriptions of the assessment process, strategies for recourse in the event of disagreement about the decisions. You will be continuing your learning for summative assessment in the upcoming videos with Dr. Amita Sharma. Hope you enjoyed learning.